This is a Bridgeport brand mill vise in pretty good shape, and today I figured I'd just film getting it cleaned up and ready to go on the machine, and then maybe tramming it in and taking some measurements. So let's get the big stuff off with a wire brush. All this accumulated dirt and crud. Okay, now we'll take some WD-40 and clean off a lot of this dirt and crap that's sitting on here. So let's flip it over and take a look at the bottom. You'll see here that the upper jaw is held on with these 3 screws and this little boxway cap that runs on these precision boxways. This is a pretty heavy casting. They did a really good job. It's got indexing tabs, so you can index it to the T-slots, and I suspect in an original Bridgeport these were actually a pretty close fit to the T-slots. These are the access holes to take the boxways off, and it's got a pivot point, which I imagine there's a pivoting base that was available from Bridgeport back when they made this. So we'll take these boxway keepers off. When you're working with old dirty stuff, it's worth your time, especially with socket-headed screws, to take a wire or something and scrape the dirt out of the screw so you get a good purchase with your hex key. Nothing is as irritating as having to remove a socket-headed screw that's stripped out or got rounded, especially when it's in a hole like this. And they're usually quite tight. Installed with vigor. So you want to have 100% of purchase on that. See all that crud in there. If you take the wire, let's get it to focus here. There we go. Take the wire, kind of stir it up, loosen it, you can get it out, or at least give the hex key a chance of getting all the way down in there, so that way you're not stripping screws or making a project harder than it needs to be. Good night. Sometimes you want a bigger cheater. Yeah. So this is a little different than a modern vise. Typically in the new stuff, your screw is running underneath the vise. It's got much heavier boxways on it. This is a lot more similar to my little drill vise, where the screw is on the top of the vise, driving the upper jaw, a little more centered on the work. From a mechanical sense, it seems like a better way to go about it, but that means the screw is exposed on the top, which also means you can keep it clean. So I don't know which is a better design. I suspect that they switched over for some reason or other. This, I kind of like this though. It's got the nice smooth lines on it. Structural web, it's a really fine casting, it's really clean. I don't think it's forged, but I could be wrong. It's not super rusty either, so we'll want to clean that up before we put it on the machine. And there's our next set of screws. Now, there's a lot of ways I can get this rust off of here. I could use steel wool and kerosene. I could throw it in an electrolytic tank. I could use rust off or a chemical process. I'm probably just going to brush it off where this interface is with my table is stopped right about here, and the rest of this is more or less a non-issue. I may just stone it real quick, that's another way to go about it, or scrape it a little bit and then stone it. Alright, so there's our boxways. Pretty dirty. Box caps, I guess. So we'll clean those up. They don't look, where the wear surface is does not look particularly worn. So that's kind of nice. Let's take a look at the other side here. The screw looks pretty good. That's, of course, going to have to get cleaned up. I like WD-40 because it kind of captures the dirt, isolates it, and leaves a little bit of a protective film after it's wiped off. The screw looks like it's in really good shape. So the question is now, how do we take this apart? And I believe that's this roll pin right here, which looks tapered. So the tapered roll pin, one end is bigger than the other, so you want to always try and push it from the small side, which looks like this side. So that means that ring should come out here. I believe our method of disassembly now, I wonder if they threaded that on or just pressed it on. There's only one way to find out. Pressed. That is just pressed on. So there's a retaining ring, screw. The journal looks really nice. It's not destroyed, at least. It gets really nice and not destroyed are a little different. And there's the slide head. And all that, of course, needs cleaned up. So I'm going to get to cleaning this. I think you guys can pretty much gather how that's going to happen, and we'll come back and put it together. So we got it painted up, cleaned up a little bit, and most of the rough, big dirt off of there. Now this is a interesting little vise. It uses box ways, which are square ways. You can see the top slide here, and these would be the little covers, and they screw on there and form this little channel that then goes over the way. So we're going to check this setup for wear, and it's really easy to adjust these. All you have to do is make this a little shorter. You can file it, sand it, check it with Dicom, and then pull that cap in, and that makes that tighter. Where you have a harder time is on the inside here, because once this material wears out, how do you get it to grow back in? And you'll notice, or I noticed on this, we'll zoom in a little bit here. You can see those checker marks there, those hash marks? So that's knurling. And they do that to raise the surface. I don't know if that happened when they made it as part of the factory design process, or if this has been torn apart and someone's worked on restoring it before and they wanted to make that a little tighter in there. So we're gonna check it with an indicator and see just how worn out we are side to side. Got the Ioga here, my little tense test indicator. I'll tell you way more than you actually need to know. Okay, so we got the indicator zeroed out here. I'm just gonna, so that's 0.003 of play in there, which isn't too bad. But I think I'd like to tighten it up just a little bit, because that play turns into twist in my vise, and if I have something in there on one side, then my vise jaws are going to be tilted off based on that twist. So how are we going to make that a little bit tighter? Now if I had a flat knurl or a setup to do flat knurling, then what I would do is knurl this surface and then dress it, and that would be fine, but I don't. So what I'm going to do is take this file that I cut at a little angle, come in here and make a series of lines to just raise that surface a little bit. When I drive the chisel in there, it displaces the material, and on each side of my chisel mark, that material comes up. So I'm going to do this for the whole series. I'm only going to do one side. I need this other side as a reference to make sure that this side is still parallel. So I went and did a kind of a checker pattern, and I'm not super consistent here, but I have raised the surface a little bit, and there's a bunch of little points here. So I'm going to take and just kiss it with my file really quick and knock off any pointy bits, and then we'll throw it on the vise and set up with the indicator again. So now we got half a thou. Now that's not a permanent fix, because all those little high points that I got are going to wear relatively quickly. So eventually I'm probably going to have to take this off and add some bearing material in there somehow, braze it, put some babbitt on it, something. But for now, this will work pretty good. So as we wrap this video up, we can talk about this old vise I got. This was a drill vise or a mill vise. It's significantly older than this one, but I'm not sure how old because the tag's pretty much worn away. But it's a very similar design. you've got the screw pushing on the jaw to put the whole thing together, and it's trying to use that screw centering up on the work to square everything. You can see in this one they put significantly more thought, or a lot more thought, into stability. There's a lot more bearing surface than in this one with the shorter jaw, but it's essentially the same design, the same basic design. And of course moved away from this design for most of the modern ones. I don't think I've seen a newer vise like this, but they're still cool. Even if they're old, you just gotta know how to work with them. So I guess we'll be signing off. Y'all have a good day, and see you next time.